They thought I'd lost my edge. They thought age had made me weak. But what they didn't know was that I'd been preparing for this moment for months, watching, waiting, documenting every single lie. I'm Victor Chen, 65 years old, and I'm about to tell you how my own son tried to steal everything I'd built over 4 decades, piece by piece, while I was still breathing. The worst part? I almost let it happen. It started on a Tuesday evening last October. I just returned from my weekly chess game at the community center in North York when I heard crying coming from the kitchen. Not loud sobbing, but that quiet, desperate kind of weeping that cuts right through you. I found my wife Margaret sitting at the table, her shoulders shaking, staring at her phone like it had just delivered the worst news imaginable. "Maggie, what's wrong?" I dropped my coat on the chair and moved toward her. She looked up, her eyes red and swollen. "Victor, I don't know how to tell you this." My heart sank. After 42 years of marriage, I knew that tone. Something was terribly wrong. "Marcus called," she whispered. "He and Rebecca. They're losing their condo, the mortgage, the car payments, everything. They're 3 months behind. The bank is threatening foreclosure." Marcus, our only child, 38 years old, working in pharmaceutical sales, always dressed in expensive suits, driving that ridiculous BMW he couldn't afford. Rebecca, his wife of 7 years, with her designer handbags and weekly spa appointments. "How much?" I asked quietly. $78,000. Margaret's voice cracked. "Victor, they're desperate. They have nowhere to go. They're asking if they can move in with us, just temporarily, until they get back on their feet." I should have seen the red flags right then. I should have asked more questions. But when you're a parent, logic doesn't always win over love. "Of course they can stay," I heard myself saying. "This is their home too." The relief on Margaret's face almost made me feel good about the decision. Almost. They moved in the following weekend. Marcus pulled up in that BMW, still shiny and expensive looking despite their supposed financial crisis. Rebecca stepped out wearing Gucci sunglasses. I remember thinking it was odd, but I pushed the thought away. People handle stress differently, I told myself. Our house in Don Mills wasn't small. 4 bedrooms, finished basement, double garage. I'd bought it 30 years ago when property in Toronto was still affordable. Now it was worth close to $2 million, fully paid off. Margaret and I had worked hard for this security. "Just for a few months, Dad," Marcus said, carrying boxes into what used to be his childhood bedroom. 6 months tops. We'll save up, find a new place, and be out of your hair. 6 months. That's what he said. The first month was fine. Tense, but manageable. Marcus left early for work, came home late. Rebecca spent most days on her laptop, supposedly job hunting. Margaret cooked dinner every night, trying to keep the peace, pretending everything was normal. But I noticed things. Small things at first. Marcus started having long phone conversations in the garage, speaking in hushed tones. Rebecca began asking casual questions about the house. When did we buy it? Was it paid off? Had we considered refinancing? I answered vaguely, uncomfortable with where her curiosity was leading. Then came the visitor. I was in my workshop in the basement one Saturday afternoon, building a bookshelf for Margaret's library, when I heard voices upstairs. Not just Marcus and Rebecca, but someone else. A man's voice I didn't recognize. I turned off the table saw and listened. "Perfect location," the stranger was saying. "Don Mills is prime real estate. Houses like this are selling for 2.2, 2.3 million easily. Maybe more if you renovate the kitchen." My blood went cold. "When do you think we can list it?" That was Rebecca's voice. "Well, that depends on the timeline you discussed. Once the paperwork is finalized, we can have it on the market within a week. In this market, you're looking at multiple offers. Bidding war. Sold within 10 days. I climbed the basement stairs slowly, each step deliberate. By the time I reached the main floor, I could see them in the living room, Marcus, Rebecca, and a man in a navy suit holding a tablet, showing them something on the screen. The man looked up when he saw me. "Oh, hello. You must be Mr. Chen. I'm Bradley Morrison, from Morrison Realty. Your son and daughter-in-law here were just asking me to do a preliminary valuation." Of valuation? I repeated flatly. Marcus jumped in quickly. Dad, we were just curious about the market, for future reference. Never hurts to know what your assets are worth. Future reference. That's right. His smile was too bright, too forced. We weren't seriously considering anything, just gathering information. Bradley Morrison, oblivious to the tension, continued enthusiastically. Well, Mr. Chen, you're sitting on a gold mine here. I'd conservatively estimate 2.1 million, but in the right market conditions, with the right buyer, you could see 2.4, maybe even 2.5. I looked at my son, really looked at him. The expensive haircut, the Rolex on his wrist that he claimed was a gift from his company, the way he wouldn't meet my eyes. Thank you for your time, Mr. Morrison, I said coldly. But we're not interested in selling. We won't be needing your services. The realtor left, confused by the sudden shift in atmosphere. Marcus tried to laugh it off, saying something about just being curious, nothing serious. Rebecca disappeared upstairs. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed next to Margaret, who was snoring softly, and stared at the ceiling. Why would Marcus bring a realtor to our house without asking us first? Why were they discussing timelines and paperwork? At 3 a.m, I got up and went to my home office. I opened my filing cabinet and pulled out the property deed, the will Margaret and I had drafted 5 years ago, all our legal documents. Everything was in order. The house was in both our names. Nothing could be sold without both our signatures. But something nagged at me. The word paperwork kept echoing in my mind. The next morning, I called my lawyer. Gerald Matthews had been handling our legal affairs for 20 years. We'd played golf together, attended each other's retirement parties. I trusted him completely. Gerald, I need you to do something for me, I said quietly, standing in the garage where no one could overhear. I need you to check if anyone has tried to access my property records or requested any documents related to my house. There was a pause. Victor, what's going on? I can't explain right now. Just please check. And Gerald, keep this between us. He called me back 2 hours later. His voice was tight, professional, the way it got when he was delivering bad news. Victor, you need to come to my office. Today. As soon as possible. I told Margaret I was going to Home Depot for supplies. I drove to Gerald's office in downtown Toronto, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Gerald didn't waste time with pleasantries. He slid a folder across his desk to me. 3 weeks ago, he said, someone submitted a power of attorney application to the Land Registry office. The application claimed that you, Victor Chen, were granting power of attorney to your son, Marcus Chen, for the purpose of property management due to health concerns. The room tilted. Health concerns? I'm perfectly healthy. I never signed anything. I know. Gerald pulled out another document. That's why I flagged it. The signature looked off to me, so I requested the original paperwork. Victor, this is a forgery. Someone forged your signature. I stared at the document. It looked official. Toronto Land Registry stamps. Legal language, witness signatures, and there, at the bottom, was a signature that looked vaguely like mine but wasn't quite right. The V was wrong. The loop on the C was too wide. If this had gone through, Gerald continued, Marcus would have had legal authority to sell your house without your consent. The application claimed you were suffering from early-stage dementia and had willingly transferred authority to him. Dementia. The word tasted bitter. I'm 65 years old and sharper than most people half my age. I know that. But the system doesn't. If I hadn't been monitoring your account as part of our standard client protection protocol, this would have slipped through. Once the POA was registered, he could have listed the house, accepted offers, signed contracts, all legally. I felt sick. My own son, forging documents, planning to sell our home, while living under our roof. What happens now? I asked. I've already filed a fraud complaint with the Land Registry and alerted the police. This is criminal. Identity fraud, forgery, attempted theft. But Victor, you need to understand something. Even with the police involved, these cases take time. Months, maybe years. And in the meantime, Marcus and Rebecca, are living in your house. So what do I do? Gerald leaned forward. First, we protect your assets immediately. I'm going to draft a protective declaration that explicitly revokes any and all powers of attorney, past or present. We'll register it today. Second, we need to change your will. If something were to happen to you right now, even with this fraud in progress, Marcus could contest and tie things up for years. Change my will how? Create a trust. Put the house and your major assets into an irrevocable trust with conditions. If anyone tries to challenge it or circumvent it through legal manipulation, they're automatically disinherited. It's airtight. Do it, I said. All of it. Today. We spent the next 4 hours in his office. Gerald drafted documents, called his associate partners, arranged emergency registrations. By 6 p.m., my assets were locked down tighter than Fort Knox. But the trust had something else. Something Gerald suggested. Something brilliant and cold. Clause 14, he explained. If any beneficiary attempts to defraud, coerce, manipulate, or steal from the estate or trust creators while they're living, that beneficiary is immediately and permanently removed from the trust. No appeal. No reconsideration. They get nothing. And Marcus trying to forge POA documents counts? Absolutely. The fraud attempt is documented. The moment you invoke this clause, he's done. But Victor, there's something you should consider. Once you trigger this, there's no going back. He'll lose everything. The inheritance, the trust, all of it. Are you prepared for that? I thought about Margaret crying at the kitchen table. I thought about the realtor standing in my living room, discussing listing prices. I thought about my son's forged signature on legal documents. I'm prepared, I said. I drove home in silence. When I walked in, Marcus was in the kitchen, eating leftovers from the fridge. He looked up and smiled like nothing was wrong. Hey, Dad, where have you been? Running errands. I set my keys on the counter. Marcus, we need to talk. Sure, what's up? Margaret appeared in the doorway, sensing tension. Rebecca came down the stairs, her phone in her hand. I went to see my lawyer today, I said calmly, about some property matters. Marcus's face went carefully neutral. Oh yeah? Yes. And he told me something very interesting. Apparently someone tried to file a power of attorney application in my name 3 weeks ago. Someone claiming I have dementia and need help managing my property. The color drained from Marcus's face. Dad, I can explain. Can you explain why my signature was forged on legal documents? Can you explain why you brought a realtor into my house to discuss selling it? Can you explain any of this, Marcus? Rebecca stepped forward. Mr. Chen, you don't understand. We're in serious financial trouble. We're drowning. We just thought. You thought you'd steal my house? My voice was rising now, months of calm shattering. You thought you'd forge documents, commit fraud, and sell the home your mother and I have lived in for 30 years? Margaret gasped. Marcus, you didn't. Tell me you didn't. But Marcus wasn't denying it anymore. His expression shifted from panic to something harder, something defiant. You have so much, Dad. This house, the savings, the investments. You and Mom don't need all this. We're your son, your family. We needed help. And you were just sitting on all these assets doing nothing. Doing nothing? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. We worked for 40 years for this security. We raised you in this house. We paid for your education. And now you think you're entitled to steal it all because you mismanaged your own finances? We weren't stealing, Rebecca interjected. We were going to give you and Margaret a portion. We'd find you a nice condo, maybe in Scarborough, something smaller, more manageable. You'd have been comfortable. Comfortable. In Scarborough, while you sold our $2 million house in Don Mills and kept the profits. It's not like you were going to use it much longer anyway, Marcus said. And there it was. The truth. You're getting older. You don't need all this space. Why should it just sit here when we could actually use the equity? Margaret started crying again. Not quiet tears this time, but deep, broken sobs. I kept my voice level. Get out. What? Get out of my house. Tonight. Both of you. Rebecca's eyes widened. Mr. Chen, please. We have nowhere to go. That's not my problem. You forged legal documents. You tried to commit fraud. I've already filed a police report. If you're not out of this house in 2 hours, I'm calling them to escort you out. Dad, come on, Marcus tried. We're family. You can't just kick us out. You stopped being family the moment you decided I was an obstacle to your financial gain. 2 hours. And leave your keys on the table. They left. Not quietly. Not gracefully. Rebecca screamed about how ungrateful we were, how they'd needed help, and we'd turned our backs. Marcus punched a hole in the hallway wall on his way out. I had to physically hold Margaret back from running after them. Then we were alone in the house. Just the two of us, like it had been before they came. Except everything felt different now. Violated, broken. Did we do the right thing? Margaret whispered that night. I held her close. We didn't have a choice. He committed fraud, Maggie. He looked us in the eye, ate our food, lived in our home, and plotted to take everything. He's our son, I know. And that was the worst part. I know. The police investigation moved forward. Marcus lawyered up immediately, claiming it was all a misunderstanding, that he'd been trying to help us prepare for the future. But the evidence was clear. The forged signature, the Realtor consultation, the fraudulent POA application. Even his expensive lawyer couldn't explain away the facts. 3 months later, Marcus accepted a plea deal. No jail time, but 3 years probation, community service, and a fraud conviction on his record. His pharmaceutical company fired him. Rebecca filed for divorce. Gerald called me into his office again. The case is settled, he said. And with the conviction, Clause 14 of your trust is automatically triggered. Marcus is no longer a beneficiary. Everything will pass to the charities you designated as alternative heirs. He knows? I sent him the notification yesterday. He's been calling my office non-stop, but there's nothing to discuss. The trust is irrevocable. The clause was clear. He made his choice. I sat in that leather chair, thinking about the baby boy I'd held 38 years ago, the toddler who'd called me Papa, the teenager I'd taught to drive, the man who'd looked me in the eye and decided I was worth more financially dead than alive. Did I do the right thing, Gerald? My lawyer, my friend, looked at me for a long moment. Victor, some parents would have looked the other way, made excuses, enabled the behavior. You held him accountable. Whether that's right or wrong, I can't say. But it was honest. That's all any of us can be. Honest. Margaret and I still live in the house in Don Mills. We've renovated the kitchen, fixed the wall, Marcus punched, planted a garden in the backyard. We volunteer at the community center, play with our neighbors' grandchildren, since we don't have our own. Sometimes, late at night, Margaret still cries. Not for the house or the money, but for the son we thought we knew. The one who never really existed. Marcus reached out once, about 6 months after the sentencing. An email, carefully worded, probably written by another lawyer. He said he understood our decision. He said he was sorry. He said he hoped someday we could reconcile. I haven't responded. Maybe someday I will. Maybe someday the anger will fade enough to see if there's anything left to salvage. But not today. Not while the forged signature is still fresh in my memory. Not while Margaret still flinches when the doorbell rings, afraid it might be him coming back. The hardest part isn't the betrayal itself. It's realizing that somewhere along the way, we raised someone who looked at their elderly parents and saw dollar signs instead of people. We raised someone who thought love and money were interchangeable. We raised someone who believed they were entitled to everything we'd built simply because we were getting older. Age doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you less worthy of dignity and respect. It doesn't mean your life's work becomes someone else's inheritance before you're even gone. They thought I'd lost my edge. They thought age had made me powerless. But I'm 65 years old, and I just taught my son the hardest lesson of his life. In the end, what you build isn't about the money or the property or the assets. It's about integrity. And that's something no one can forge, steal, or take away. I just wish he'd learned that before it cost him everything.